Good morning, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you again for coming back. So, I have some news to share with you for today, some in a reading, some in a video. October 5, 2021. Thank you again for coming back. So, as you might already heard from different media sources, yeah, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is in a honeymoon mode, celebrating his inauguration in Mescal Square with, thousands and thousands of attendees without, creating a government without without the representation of from Tigray region, from Harare, from Southern National, uh, and also no representatives uh, from Oromo, especially Oromo Liberation Army, OFC, Oromo Federalist Congress. Uh, in a clear term, Oromos do not have representatives in this government. This government is formed by former members of EPRDF, just with exclusion of TPLF. So OPDO and uh, the Amara party, for now, the Somalians are not included. They conducted election, but the government is formed without representatives from Somalia, Harar, Tigray, and Oromo, and plus the southern nations. So the honeymoon is happening, and they are celebrating. Prosperity Party and their supporters are celebrating the honeymoon and giving false hope for Ethiopians and false bright future for the next 5 years. And so I got some news on this one and others. So I will start with the United Nations briefing short video. Then I will read the materials. Then I have a couple of videos at the end. So thank you again. Let's start with United Nations briefing on Ethiopia. Just very short one. I don't need the other one. So let's see.
On Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the humanitarian crisis in Tigray remains dire, with 5.2 million people needing food aid, including 400,000 people living in famine-like conditions. The spread of conflict into the Amhara and Afar regions is pushing more people into desperate conditions. As we've been telling you, the delivery of aid has been difficult. Since the 12th of July, the UN has brought in 606 trucks of humanitarian supplies, but we need 100 trucks to carry aid into Tigray every day. The UN has not been allowed to bring in fuel since the end of July, leading to some of our partners having had to severely reduce or suspend their activities. Cash to run operations is also running out. Medical supplies are depleted, with nearly 200,000 children having missed critical vaccinations. The UN is engaging with the government of Ethiopia for sustained and regular access for aid convoys. Meanwhile, in Amhara, fighting along the Tigray regional boundary has led to hundreds of thousands of people being displaced. People in some areas reportedly do not have access to aid or basic services, including electricity, water, and telecommunications. In Afar, it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of people are directly affected by the conflict, including tens of thousands of people who have been displaced and are in need of urgent assistance. Our humanitarian partners continue to scale up their response in both Amhara and Afar. The UN urges all parties to the conflict to ensure that aid can reach all civilians in need. Our colleagues say that without a ceasefire, humanitarian needs will continue to grow, and there will be no way to sustainably address the suffering in Tigray, Amhara, and Afar. At the Security Council this morning, Helen Lalim, the head of the UN mission in Haiti, said that the country is undergoing one of the most fraught periods.
Okay, that's so the United Nations briefing, includes talks about different countries, but I want to give you just the update on the humanitarian situation in Tigray, Amara region, and Afar. So that's the update. But the Ethiopian government is not listening. The United Nations is keep, demanding, 100 trucks a day to be allowed to enter Tigray, but so far that demand never happened. So that's a challenge. So I will come to the other videos. So thank you again. Let's read some news. And the first one is, as it reckons with multi-layered crisis, Ethiopia forms new government in the absence of Tigray, incomplete electoral process. As per the established norm, President Sahle-Work Zewde has this morning opened the sixth joint parliamentary session of the House of People's Representatives, HOPR, and the House of Federation, HOF, in a bid to mark the formation of a new government. Is set to appoint a new speaker, deputy speaker. The joint session has then moved on nominating and appointing members of the new government, including the Prime Minister and the Speaker of both houses. Accordingly, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was elected by the joint parliament to become the next Prime Minister, the first for the Prime Minister, who assumed the position on January 2, 2018, after being appointed by then Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, EPRDF, the party he since dismantled to form his own Prosperity Party. The HOPR also elected Lomi Bedo as deputy speaker. Lomi replaces Shitai Minale, who served the parliament as deputy speaker since 2015. Prior to her election as deputy speaker today, Lomi served as a speaker of the Oromia State Council, or Chafe Oromia. Similarly, member of the HO, House of Federation, elected former Amara State President Agenyo Teshagar as a Speaker of the Upper House. Agenyo replaced the outgoing Speaker Adam Farah. In the absence of Tigray and incomplete electoral processes, for the first time since the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia was constituted in 1995, Ethiopia is forming a new government in the absence of one of the 10 members of its federation, Tigray State, and in the backdrop of an incomplete electoral process. Ethiopia decided to hold its twice postponed election in June 2021. The six national elections were originally scheduled for the May 2020. The date was then changed for August 2020 before being indefinitely postponed by the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 in the country in March 2020. That was the excuse. The electoral process featured scandals ranging from irregularities in both candidates and the voter registration process to cancelling of polling stations to the electoral board dispute with Harare region. In the Somali region, 7 constituencies were tainted by voter registration irregularities. In Addis Ababa, opposition parties complained of irregularities in the process, and in Oromia, residents complained of forced registration. Days before election, National Election Board cancelled and postponed voting in a number of constituencies across 6 out of the regional states. Nonetheless, the ruling Prosperity Party secured a landslide victory for the ruling party, where elections in the Somali, Harar, Southern nations, nationalities, and peoples regions only took place 3 days ago on September 30, 2021. Commenting on the election that took place amid growing calls for the cessation of hostilities and an inclusive dialogue, the United States said Ethiopia's election process was not free or fair for all Ethiopians and calls for inclusive political participation to move the country forward. The June 21 elections in Ethiopia took place against a backdrop of grave instability, including increasing inter-ethnic and inter-communal conflict, and an electoral process that was not free or fair for all Ethiopians, the State Department said in a statement, adding, the boycott of the elections by opposition parties, the detention of vocal political leaders, and the ongoing violence in multiple parts of the country underscore the need to launch an inclusive effort to build a national consensus on the governance of Ethiopia that preserves the sovereignty and the unity of the state and strengthens the constitutional order. The establishment of the new government comes despite the absence of the biggest opposition parties in Oromia and the Somali regions, Ethiopia's 2 biggest regions, and host the country's biggest nation and 3rd biggest nation, respectively. All of Oromo Federalist Congress, OFC, Oromo Liberation Front, OLF, and Ogaden National Liberation Front, ONLF, withdraw from the elections. It also comes only 4 days after the second round of elections were held in Somali, Harar, and several constituencies in other regions, as well as before the conclusion of the South-West Regional State referendum. It is noteworthy to mention that Tigray Regional State is not represented either in the House of People Representative or House of Federation, as the region's elections that took place in September 2020 were nullified and deemed illegal by the federal parliament. The state of Ethiopia's diplomacy. The country's diplomacy suffered severe blow as a result of the war in Tigray, as relations with humanitarian partners and long-standing allies deteriorated. The United States administration and the Ethiopian government traded accusations over aid delivery and obstruction of aid. In addition, the United States repeatedly called for an end to hostilities allowing unfettered humanitarian access and the initiation of a national dialogue. Moreover, President Joe Biden issued an executive order authorizing sanctions against those deemed responsible for the continuation of the conflict as well as the prolonging of the humanitarian crisis in northern Ethiopia, promoting a response by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed criticizing the move. The most recent blow to Ethiopia's international image came after the federal government declared 7 United Nations organization senior staff members persona non grata and ordered them to leave the country within 72 hours. The move promoted condemnation from the United Nations, United Kingdom, European Union, and Germany. It also promoted the United States administration to threaten further sanctions using the executive order issued by President Joe Biden. These developments were coupled with a decision to downgrade or shut down overseas diplomatic outposts, most recently the closure of the embassy in Cairo. For all the mounting challenges with an electoral mandate now at his disposal, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed assumes office with the ball at his court. The U.S. impending sanction, including the threat to delist Ethiopia from the list of countries benefiting from the AGOA privilege, and diplomatic isolation from the rest of Ethiopia's traditional Western allies are all conditioned in the new government's ability and the willingness to enter into a negotiated ceasefire with Tigray forces to end the months-old war that has ripped the country apart. Whether Prime Minister Abiy prioritizes peace over his repeated slogans of prosperity is yet to be seen. So, due to unfairness of election and global isolation, only 8 countries, all of them from Africa, attended Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed inauguration for his second term. So does indicate how the country is isolated. I will read these countries who, represented by president and prime minister. And for some reason, his advisor, his core advisor on the war in Tigray and other issues, didn't attend this inauguration. President Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea didn't show up for this inauguration for unknown reason. So there may be some issue between them. We don't know. So he is supposed to be the first to arrive in Addis Ababa according to their relationship, but it didn't happen. So the other countries sent their president. Only eight countries. Nobody from European Union. Nobody from United Nations. Nobody from US. Only African countries, and only 8. Nobody from Sudan. Nobody from Egypt. Nobody from Libya. Nobody from others. And the Middle East. Nobody. Okay, here we go. Nigeria President Muhammadu Buhari, Kenya President Uhuru Kenyatta, Uganda Dictator Yoweri Museveni, Somalia President Abdullahi Mohamed Farmajo, Djibouti President Omar Gule, Democratic Republic of Congo Prime Minister Jean Michel Sama, South Sudan President Salva Kiir, and Senegal President Macky Sall. So only 8 countries, African countries, sent their president and the prime minister. So, and as I said, his core advisor, President Isaias Afwerki, is missing. Now we're going to find out the reasoning in the future. Credit at this standard. A protest broke out at Irrecha Hora Finfinne Festival in Ethiopia's capital. Protest calling for the release of political prisoners, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed downfall, and they were praising the Oromo Liberation Army commander widely known as Jalmarro, broke out in Addis Ababa in the midst of Irrecha, the Oromo Thanksgiving 2021 celebration. In a heavy presence of federal police, people gathered in the early hours of the morning at Hora Finfinne in the center of the capital Addis Ababa to perform rituals. Not long after, protesters started shouting slogans like Johar, 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 down, down, Abiy, and Marro. So, sources on the ground told Addis Standard that although the security apparatus response has been measured so far, injuries have occurred, and those injured have been moved to Zauditu Hospital, and the police made arrests at the premise of the festival at Meskel Square. So not only injuries, some media are reporting the deaths of 7 Oromo users in confrontation with the police. Despite the Irrecha festival evolving through the decades into a platform for the Oromo youth to express their concerns about the existing political and the subsequent economic and social challenges their communities face. The organizer of the festival and the Tulama Abbagada Gobana Hola, in a talk with BBC Amharic, warned attendees to refrain from platforming any political agendas at the festival. We come to the water carrying only grass. There is no need to exaggerate which flag to wave, he said, referring to the flag of the Oromo Liberation Front, OLF, that symbolizes resistance and is often prohibited from entering the premise of the festival. So you might already saw videos, Oromo youth celebrating the Irrecha and calling other slogans too. I will read some more slogans expressed on this of protest against Prime Minister Abiy and Prosperity Party. These protesters were also calling justice for Hachalu Hundessa. We don't need Adanech Abibe, that's the mayor for Addis Ababa, Shimalis Abdisa, the president of Oromia region, down, down PP, Prosperity Party, down, down Opidio, Abiy must resign, Oromos don't die for the war doesn't concern you. We love Jalmarro, Onek Shene. Finfinne will not be under Menelik's leadership. Finfinne or Addis Ababa will not be under Menelik leadership, and several other slogans were expressed in this protest. Police detained prominent journalists shortly after reporting on protest video at Irrecha festival in the capital. Ethiopian Federal Police said missing prominent journalist Tesfalem Weldeyes, founder and editor-in-chief of Ethiopia Insider, an emerging Amharic news outlet, is in a police custody. Tesfalem was reported missing by families and friends since Saturday, October 1. This morning, Mulisa Abdisa, the Federal Police Crime Investigation Unit Deputy Bureau Head, told the BBC Amharic that Tesfalem was in police custody under investigation. Tesfalem was reported missing late on Sunday night by his friends in Addis Ababa. He was last seen at the Irrecha Hora Finfinne festival in Addis Ababa, where he posted a video of Oromo youth demanding the release of Oromo political prisoners. A family member of Tesfalem told Addis Standard that she heard the news on social media just like everyone else. I have no knowledge of his whereabouts or what has happened to him, the family member, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said. He is currently at the Federal Police Investigation Bureau detention center located in Mexico area, Mulisa said. Nothing will happen. We are investigating. There is nothing to worry about. But he declined to give details of what Tesfalem was detained for. The video shared on Ethiopia Insider's Facebook page showing the protests that broke out during the Irrecha celebration in Addis Ababa on Saturday went viral with more than 22,000 likes and more than 6,000 shares. The BBC Amharic stated that it has learned from reliable sources that security forces have searched Tesfalem houses after they had detained him. Hamis Awal, a colleague of Tesfalem at Ethiopia Insider, is quoted as saying Tesfalem was planning to cover the Irrecha festival on Sunday, October 3rd, in Bishoftu city of Oromia state. Hamis said he failed to reach him by phone after he shared the video and photos of the holiday on Saturday after 8 a.m. local time. Tesfalem has been in the area since early morning to cover the Irrecha celebration in Addis Ababa, Hamis said, adding that he had repeatedly tried to contact him by phone and text message, but failed to know his whereabouts until Monday morning. Tesfalem is a well-known independent journalist who has previously worked for the weekly English and Amharic newspaper Addis Fortune and Addis Nagar, respectively. He was arrested in April 2014 when he was working as member of Addis Standard newsroom and was subsequently charged with terrorism along with 5 others. After he was set free by a federal court more than 2 years later, Tesfalem went to exile to Germany, where he worked for the Deutsche Welle Amharic department. He returned home in 2020 and co-founded Ethiopia Insider website, a reliable news outlet which is gaining a large following in social media. Credit Addis Standard. So Ethiopia is very, very dangerous place for journalists and political activists and opposition political party members under Abiy Ahmed. Very serious. That's why we are opposing this government. You know, the undercover operatives are very sensitive, not tolerant of any opposition viewpoint. So this is a very serious business, and there is no respect for law. There is no respect for free speech, and journalists are under a threat of danger in Ethiopia. Okay, this is U.S. State Department on the situation in Ethiopia again. The United States strongly condemned the government of Ethiopia's expansion of the 7 UN officials, and we call for an immediate reversal of this decision. The officials expelled from the country include a senior official from the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, as well as the head of both the United Nations Children Fund and the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, whose work is so critical to the ongoing humanitarian relief effort. And this announcement came just days after OCHA chief Martin Griffin warned that a man-made famine is taking hold in Ethiopia. That's why these expansions are counterproductive to international efforts to keep civilians safe and to deliver life-saving humanitarian assistance to the millions in dire need. The United Nations also conducted important human rights investigation, which is why these expansions are so troublesome. It is critical that these individuals be allowed to return to Ethiopia in order to carry out their important life-saving work and duties. The executive order that on September 17 President Biden issued to establish a new sanctions regime that authorized the imposition of targeted economic sanctions in connection with the crisis in the northern Ethiopia. We have been very clear. We will not hesitate to use this authority or other tools to respond to those who obstruct humanitarian assistance to the people of Ethiopia or a peaceful resolution to the conflict. And we call on the international community, similarly, to employ all appropriate tools to apply pressure on the government of Ethiopia and any other actors impeding humanitarian access. We urge the government of Ethiopia to collaboratively work with UN and international partners to allow and facilitate safe and unhindered humanitarian access to all in need. That has been a long-standing call of ours. So that is U.S. State Department on the situation in Ethiopia, especially the humanitarian situation and on the cessation of hostility. They have been calling on the end of the war and the end of hindering humanitarian deliveries. But do the Ethiopian government listen? Not at all. They are fighting back. They are fighting back. I'm sure they are waiting for severe penalty, tough sanctions. They don't feel nothing so far. Okay, this is on China. China conduct on Taiwan. Increasing People's Republic of China military pressure against Taiwan undermine regional peace and stability. So this is a press statement from U.S. State Department. The United States is very concerned by the People's Republic of China provocative military activity near Taiwan, which is destabilizing, risks miscalculation, and undermine regional peace and stability. We urge Beijing to cease its military, diplomatic, and economic pressure and coercion against Taiwan. We have an abiding interest in peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. We will continue to assist Taiwan in maintaining a sufficient self-defense capability, and we will maintain our commitment as outlined in the three communiques, the Taiwan Relations Act, and the 6 assurances. The United States' commitment to Taiwan is rock solid and contributes to the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and within the region. We will continue to stand with friends and allies to advance our shared prosperity, security, and values and deepen our ties with the democratic Taiwan. So that's a very strong statement from U.S. State Department on China aggression around Taiwan or against Taiwan. War could break out if that situation is not handled. China tried to control Taiwan activity and claiming Taiwan as its own. It could create a war between China and Taiwan. Then other third parties may join. So very fluid situation. Okay, this is the last part of today's reading. New York's largest healthcare provider fires 1,400 unvaccinated workers. That's the consequences for those refusing to vaccinate for vaccination for some reason. So they are losing their job now. New York State largest healthcare provider, Northwell Health, has fired 1,400 employees who refused to get COVID-19 vaccination, according to a spokesman, Joe Kemp. As with other healthcare companies that have recently terminated workers for not complying with the vaccine mandates, the fired employees represent a small percentage of Northwell's workforce of more than 76,000, all of whom are now inoculated. New York's vaccination mandates for healthcare workers went into effect last week. Several other states, including California, have imposed similar measures. Officials have credited the requirement with increasing the rate of vaccination, though a small number of employees have decided they would rather lose their jobs than get shots. It's ridiculous. Northwell announced its vaccine mandates in August, weeks before the state requirement. The company's mandate extended to both clinical and non-clinical workers. Our goal was not to terminate employees, Kemp said. Our goal was to get people vaccinated. I agree. Kemp said the termination will have no impact on patient care at Northwell's 23 hospitals and other facilities. Northwell regrets losing any employee under such circumstances, the company said in a statement. We owe it to our staff, our patients, and the communities we serve to be 100% vaccinated against COVID-19. Credit Reuters. So I don't know why they are creating all these unnecessary conflict. Get vaccination, already researched. This vaccination has no risk at all, just minimal risk to some individuals. So I don't know why, unless they have other alternatives, to work somewhere, uh, you know, who can allow them without getting vaccinated. So these are people working in the health center, not only for their safety, for the safety of their patient. They're supposed to get, vaccinated. They're supposed to be the first to get the vaccination. But I don't know. People create challenges, unnecessary challenges. People in Africa and other parts, they are still waiting for these vaccines. They don't have. We are here, we have it, but we create something unnecessary. Okay, so the decision, I agree with those Northwell Health. That's a good decision. They have to get vaccinated because they are treating, people. Okay, that's enough on the reading. Couple of videos, then will be the end, and my conclusion at the end. Okay, let's see. The first one is Prime Minister sworn as for second term, and the second one is, you might already view this very, very brutal police act in Addis Ababa. It's a graphic image, so be careful. Don't watch it with children. Let's listen to this one first.
Hyundai Sonata versus Honda Accord. Hyundai Sonata wins every time.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Oh no. There we go. Let's see. Okay, so this one is a report on the Prime Minister inauguration second term. Let's listen. Just be careful when you are watching the next video. Don't watch it with kids. There's a graphic and how the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed police force are brutal in that country.
Well, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been sworn in for a second term after he and his party secured a seeming landslide victory in June's elections. He's described the poll as Ethiopia's first attempt at a free and fair vote. The vote, though, was overshadowed by the conflict in Tigray, where hundreds of thousands are currently facing famine. Well, meanwhile, there are also reports of heavy fighting in western Ethiopia between rebel groups and security forces there. It's already displaced thousands of people just since Sunday. And news is now also emerging of a mass kidnapping that took place last month in the same region. Well, let's now speak to Samuel Getachew. He's an Ethiopia-based journalist, and he joins us now from Dessie, that's in Ethiopia's Amhara region. Samuel, so Abiy now has another 5-year term, but that's really not been uncontroversial.
Well, in 2018, the Prime Minister was appointed by Parliament. This is his first time being elected. He received an overwhelming support, but it was a very controversial election with a number of states, including Tigray, that did not participate. As you know, the election that they held a year ago is part of what provoked the conflict that's been running for almost a year now.
And Samuel, meanwhile, we've been seeing this real deterioration in security in a number of regions across the country for a variety of reasons, depending on the area. But how is the government addressing that? Does Abiy actually have the resources and the political backing to deal with it?
I mean, the Prime Minister seems to have a wide spread support, a uniform-like support in many parts of the country still. But Ethiopia again is an important country with 110 million people, with an economy that's growing, but it's also dependent on aid. It's been having issues with the U.S. government, the U.S. aid, which has been supporting aid or humanitarian assistance to some of the victims that have been coming forward since the beginning of the conflict. According to the UN, more than 1 million people are facing famine in Tigray alone. The conflicts, Amhara region in Dessie, the conflicts we're seeing is overwhelming. The need is huge, and it's also in Afari region. The government will be in a very challenged position to address some of the challenges the country is facing. And this conflict is also pushing away some of the foreign investment that have been important to Ethiopia's building a new image, moving from an aid-dependent nation to an economy that's respected. So the Prime Minister will be busy from day one, I would suspect.
I bet. Samuel Getachew, then, Ethiopia-based journalist, speaking to us from Dessie. Thanks so much, Samuel.
Thank you.
Jim Butler is the Chevy powerhouse.
Jim Butler is the Chevy powerhouse.
Shop online or stop by our...
Okay, this is how the police are trained in treating a homeless woman with her children. How brutal they are. No conduct, ethics conduct in front of the baby, in front of very young children and in public.
Magaalaa Finfinnee irraa viidiyoon dhufte tokkini viidiyoon kun. Nama hedduu miiraa tuqxe. Dubartiin isin agartanii kadaa'imisi bira dhaabbatu kunin dubartiin kunin dubartii Oromoo takka. Poolisoota lamaan tumamte Finfinnee keessatti. Sababii isiin tumamteef karaa gubbaa dhaabbattee kadhattee jedhama. Karaa gubbaa dhaabbatanii kadhachuun dhowwa ta'uu isaati Finfinnee keessatti. Garuu Bataskaan Ortodoksii bira eegitee
So she was mother of a child, and she's homeless. She's begging to feed her children and herself.
Qabatee kadhatu. Yesuusii qabatee kadhatu hedduu argina. Yoo ta'u Oromoo taatee Finfinnee keessa dhuftee kadhattu kadhachuun dhowwaadha. Dubartiin kadhattu kunini karaa gubbaa dhaabattee waan kadhatteef poolisii lamaan akkasittuu tumamte ilmisii fuula durattu. Poolisoonni kun lamaan ammaan tana hidhamanii jiranii jedhamee dubbatama. Dubartiin tumamte kun maqaan ishee Samiraa Mohammadii jedhamti. Samiraan tunini dargaggeetti naannoo Jijjigaa jiraattu nama Harargee
If the news is true, he is saying that the two police officers who attacked her, they are under arrest. If it's true,
jiru bareeda nama qabdu nama carraaqxee uf bulchitu ijoolloo fi maatii bulchitu nama warrisii kafirisii Harargee turre gargaartu jechuudhaan dubbatama. Haa ta'uuti malee abdiilee gaafa aari'u qabeenya isiin horatte hunda keessaa baasee daa'ima ofii qabatte lubbuu xiyyaan na baasite ijoollee ishii gurratte gara Finfinneetti dhufte. Gaafa gara Finfinnee dhufte sanii mootummaan Opidio gaafa suni ture maallaqa hedduu maqaa warraatiin guure. Tombolaan lootereen cufti maqaa warraatiin kaffalamee maqaa warraatiin birrii biiliyoona tokkootii fi miiliyoona 400 guurame. Opidiyoon lafittiin seente. Opidiyoon warra jechuun awwaal irraa wafuudhee nyaatu ummata afaan du'aa afaan beelaa jiru kana maallaqi sun.
Okay, so he's discussing, she's before 2 years she was also displaced from Somali region. She became homeless now, and she faced this, unnecessary treatment by federal police. The government can't give you unemployment, can't give you any support, supposed to, And instead, you go on the street and do everything to feed your children. Now you are facing karate and unnecessary police brutality. So there is, this is just the tip of an iceberg. It's very small and for this government. We have been reporting other brutalities, happening under this government. So many Oromos and thousands and thousands are still in jail, including senior politicians and many teenagers and adults taken out of from the prison, from legal prison, and killed just behind the school or in a forest, and throw their body in the forest, and deny proper burials for to the families and relatives. So many challenges, and that's why we say this government is a failed government for so many reasons. Let me conclude by stating this. This is not a new government anyway. You might see some shift, some change in personality, just bringing some from regional state to the federal. Except that, all is the old OPDOs and the old Amara party who served TPLF in the past. The same from southern region. So these are the same people. Too much blood in their hand. Too much blood. They're supposed to be in court instead of being a prime minister. They are. Those now in a leadership position, they are members of OPDO. They just change their name to avoid responsibility. They have been abusing, killing, arresting Oromos for the last 30 years. First under the leadership of TPLF, then now under their own leadership. So how they can be clean? No. They're going to continue their criminal conduct. So now the Prime Minister inaugurated for the next 5 years, but under very, very tough situation. He cannot change the situation. He cannot. The country is isolated globally. The country is under sanction. Embassies closing, many, more, at least 30 embassies. Economic inflation, expensive basic commodities, expensive. People cannot buy bread or some other basic items, and multiple war command posts, a high unemployment, ethnic tension, hate also increasing. So many problems in that country, and lawlessness and lack of accountability and discipline and injustice. People are just jailed without any proof of criminal conduct. Then without any due process, they can be in prison for years, and they can move prisoners from place to place, denying them representation, lawyers, denying them food, denying them clothing, and torturing them. So many issues. So I don't think this Prime Minister and the Prosperity Party can fix this problem and bring the country into a much better position. But Prime Minister is giving too much false hope, too much. In action, zero. Nothing. Nothing. He didn't call for dialogue. He didn't call to fix the issue the country has with the global community. So he preferred confrontation with the Western countries, European Union and US. He preferred the continuation of war. So how are you going to bring change? So it's up to the Ethiopians. It's up to the Ethiopians again. I know he got some Amara support. They are the ones, they are the backbone of his, this prime minister. If you lose Amara, he's done. Now, for now, they are supporting him blindly, despite all these challenges the country is facing. They are supporting him. So for Oromos, and for Tigrayans, and for others, freedom fighters, I don't think you allow him to continue for the next 5 years. I don't think. You should continue your resistance, and you have to support your freedom fighters. You have to double your contribution when it comes to fundraising. Do protesting more at home and globally. This will minimize the problem and will eliminate the problem from that country, and a better system will be created, much better than Prosperity Party. If all united, we can take the country back from these killers. We can bring accountability in that country. We can bring Ethiopia to the global stage, more friendly, more investment, more scholarship for our children, more employment. That's the bright future if we challenge this Prosperity Party and eliminate those killers. Those have blood in their hand for the last 27 and plus 3 years after the reform. So the struggle should continue. The resistance should continue. We have to double our effort. We have to continue protesting until the system is changed in that country. We don't allow Prosperity Party to degrade Ethiopians and Ethiopia to further bad shape. The country is already in a very bad bloody war, and the border is not respected. Democracy is not there. We are following Isaias Afwerki. That's not a good model for Ethiopia. And conflict is high, command post, inflation, global isolation. All these problems will be eliminated if we continue the resistance and remove Prosperity Party from Ethiopia. So thank you again. I will be back with other news. Be safe and so long, everyone.